Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Eddie Jennings from EJSLLC.com. This video is another in my practice session series for the Red Hat Certified Specialist in Identity Management Exam EX362. Before I dive in, I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video, as well as invite anyone who has not subscribed to click the subscribe button and ring the bell when you do, so you know when new content is available. Also, a reminder that these are my practice sessions for the exam. My exam is in just under a week, and so I am doing one more review of all of the posted objectives by Red Hat, and I'm trying to either explain the concepts behind the objectives or do some examples of the objectives. And at the end of the video, I'll do a little assessment and hopefully determine that I feel confident with the objective. And if not, I have just under a week to do a little bit of last-minute knowledge gap filling. That being said, these should not be considered tutorials, nor should they be considered authoritative training materials. I do try to have the information accurate because hopefully at this point in my preparation I have not learned something wrong, but understand I am learning right along with you, so do not use these as authoritative materials. I put these out on the internet in hopes that anyone else working on EX362 might see some of the stuff that I do to practice, and that might give you some ideas of things that you could do to help practice for the exam. So continuing with the create and configure IDM users and user policies and the subtopic of configure policies and user access, I wanted to go back and take a look at the host-based access control stuff. I started doing it in my last session and the session got a bit long, so we're going to revisit that. This is a pretty nifty feature in my opinion. So first of all, you have some default rules here. Basically, all users can get to all hosts. So one of the things that you will likely need to do if you were to create host-based access rules, you're likely going to either need to delete these or disable them. But before we do that, let's take a look at what they're actually doing. So the allow all is just what it says. Anyone accessing any system by any service. The service is a curious thing because that gets into your service principles and such. I may or may not do some practicing with that, but we'll see, because that's not one of my stronger areas. Well, that's probably why I should practice it, right? This would involve like, let's say you are running Apache and you need to and you are utilizing Kerberos for some type of authentication to Apache. This is something that you can use to limit that. But this default rule is basically allowing anyone to access anything on any host. And this one is allowing the systemd user to do what it needs to do for, I believe, running the necessary services for the IPA client. I think, not 100% sure on that. Now, if you out there are a master of these rules, by all means, put that in the comments for exactly what it's doing. I'm sure others would want to learn about it. So you can make these rules, as always, via the GUI or via the command line. We're going to just call this test rule 1. Simply going to add this and then go in to edit it. Now, one thing to note with this is I am not aware of any type of priority or weighting, which is one of the reasons why you would need to eventually, disable the allow all rule. I would not necessarily delete it. I would just disable it. But anyway, so for this rule, we're going to try just a couple of things here. We are going to say any user. Oh, not anyone. We want specific users. And this, you have to be kind of careful with this because depending on how you write your rule, you might find yourself in a situation where you can't log into anything. So hopefully I'm not going to do that for this. I'm actually going to do, this is only going to apply to test user 1. So let's see how well this works. So test user 1, and just for host, we're going to say test user 1 can log into IDM client 2, and let's see of the services. There are several that are here by default. We're going to say any service. Okay, so we have our rule. It is saved. Let us go open my command line here, and lab IDM client 1. I'm just going to log in. I'm going to clear SSSD cache and restart SSSD. So sudo ss cache -e, and we'll do the same for client 2. This Eddie account is a local account, so I'll be able to get into these and do what needs to be done regardless. Okay, so let's see if test user 1 can sign in to client 2. So we'll start with that one. So SSH test user 1 at lab IDM client 2. All right, that was successful. And let's try number 1. I think this is going to work because we have not disabled the rule for everything. Yes, and we're in. All right, so let me exit. And let's disable the allow all rule. Not going to delete it, we're just going to disable it. And let's try that login to client 1 again. All right, that failed. So we kind of expected that. And let's go to client 2. And we're in with client 2. Now what I'm curious is if I've effectively locked myself out of kind of everything with this. So I'm going to try to log in as the admin user to client 1. Yeah. So that's one of the things you have to be careful about is, are you locking out more things than you intend for this? Let me re-enable that so people can log in. So trying to think kind of real world how I would write these rules, since you can, kind of lock yourself out of everything with that. You would want to have, well, you can't really do denies with these. Yeah, I'd have to think that through a bit. Obviously on the exam, if you have to write HBAC rules, the exam will probably tell you, it won't tell you what rules to write, I wouldn't think, but they'll probably give you, and we want to be able to do X, right? The rules to allow X to happen, not like put this exact thing in your rule. But in the real world, you would have to be very careful if you want to do the host-based access rules to perhaps you have a rule for a group of administrators, and that group of administrators can get to everything, but your individual users, you might have like an overall users group, and then I guess you can use the auto membership rules to grab all your user accounts and throw them in there. So some things that you would have to think about with that. Is there anything else I want to do with host-based access control? You can create services. Now these, I'm not 100% sure if this, so yeah, I can add a service, and we're just going to call it foo. Add and edit. All we can do is a description for that. We'll take a look at, this is something that I do need to review a bit more before the exam. This was something that was in the course I took, was covered relatively early on. It's like these somehow both, I guess my point of confusion is thinking about service principals. And if there needs to be a relationship with these, I think this is more of the actual name of the systemd service that these relate to. Or in the case of something like su or sudo, there is no service, there's just the executable. This is something that HBAC services, I'm definitely going to need to do a little more review before the exam. And service groups, have groups of these together. Let me take a look at sudo I. I'm just curious. Let me log into lab client 1. Nope, lab IDM client 1. Just grab all the systemd units. Actually, I'm going to do that and grep for sudo. Yeah, I figure that's not there. Cronny is going to be there. So yeah, I need to do some more reading of this. It's probably something once I read it, I'll remember it because it's been a while since I've touched it. But if this is a one-to-one thing, and I guess we can put this to the test. How to do that in my little testing environment? I guess I could try to install vsftpd on something. Yeah, let's do that. This is one of the things I talk about to encourage folks to do, and it's just try something. So let's make that happen. DNF install vs FTP. Wouldn't be D, would it? I guess it would. I guess it is D. All right. So let us enable. Okay. It says TULPN to see what port it's listening on, and looks like it is listening on 21. So let's add port 21. A little runtime to permanent, which is my new best friend. All right, so we should be allowing firewall traffic to that. Let's go into Etsy. Let's look at, I'm sure there's a VSFTPD comp file. Let's see what we can find in here that maybe will let us or help us. Synonymous enable no ham service name VSFTPD. What I was looking for is maybe something that says use Kerberos, unless this is one of these things that kind of like SSHD just uses the Etsy KRB5, like the default Kerberos key tab. Maybe this does the same. Well, let's just see. There we have for man VSFTPD, the configuration file. Let's see, allow non-SSL. So I might need to do disable user list. All right, okay, so it has user lists. Let's look at FTP users. Users not allowed to log in via FTP. That's curious. One thing that you can do, just remembered this, I should say, is there's a way of doing a test. What you would do for this test. Let's say that, do it this way. Well, I can show the test. You can use this test to test your rule, including stuff about services. So let's do test user 1 accessing LabIDM client 1, and let's say the service is VSFTPD. The rule that we're wanting to check is test rule 1, and then we run the test. And right now, if I were to try that rule, it would give me an access denied, and that makes sense because this rule, we said they could do test client 2. So we can go back to our rule test here, and we can do test user 1, trying to get to LabIDM client 2 via the service VSFTPD. It has remembered that, running that against test rule 1. Let's run the test again, and that would be granted because our rule, we said LabIDM client 2 via any service. If I were to change this and say you can only do SSHD, we go back to our test rule. I'm not sure if you can do the test via the command line. That would be a curious thing to try out. Or to actually fully refresh the browser, it would reset these values. Access denied because we only said for that rule it can be SSHD. So some pretty nifty stuff, and the little rule test can be a quick way to see if it will work. I still would encourage you on the exam to try to do the actual authentication rather than just rely on the rule test. That's kind of the maybe the paranoid side of me. I think I hit the RBAC rules a little bit earlier with IPA server, but as far as this particular objective, configure policies and user access, I think this is about it. So I'm still going to consider this a pass, even though maybe a half pass, as I need to, in my last few days, do some review of working with the services and looking at services that are, if I need to create my own service, understanding what that relationship is this really a system D service, or if this is some other little thing. But I have a feeling when I look at my materials in such a game, because of course I do these practice sessions just based off of what memory I have, it will come back to me with that. So hopefully you found this video useful, or at the very least you see me stumbling through something might show, hey, if I know as much as Eddie does, I probably need to prepare some more myself. But regardless, if you found some use out of this, make sure you do click like. I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video, as well as invite anyone who's watching, if you haven't subscribed, to click the subscribe button. Thank you for taking the time to watch, and I'll see you the next time.